He dragged her suitcase across the manicured lawn like it meant nothing, the wheels catching in the grass before tipping over. "You came with nothing," Aaron Whitlock snapped, loud enough for every neighbor to hear. "You leave with nothing." His mother stood behind him, arms crossed in approval. The woman beside him, Vanessa now, not just a colleague, leaned against the doorway, watching with a quiet, satisfied smile. And in the middle of it all, Elise Carter bent down, picked up her fallen coat, and said nothing. 6 hours earlier, she had signed a deal that would decide the fate of companies Aaron didn't even know he depended on. But he didn't know that, and that was the problem. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. 6 hours earlier, the power in that marriage had already shifted, silently. The grass was still damp from the morning sprinklers. It clung to the wheels of the suitcase as Aaron kicked it again, harder this time, sending it rolling toward the curb. "You hear me?" he said. "Nothing. You walk out the same way you walked in." Elise didn't answer. She stood there for a moment, hands relaxed at her sides, as if she hadn't just been thrown out of a house she had lived in for 3 years. As if the neighbors stepping onto their porches weren't staring. As if the word nothing hadn't just been used to erase her. Across the street, a man paused mid-step, his dog pulling at the leash. 2 women whispered to each other near a parked car. Phones were already out, recording. Aaron noticed. Of course he did. He straightened his shoulders, voice rising just enough to carry. "That's right," he continued. "Let them see. Let them see what happens when someone forgets their place." Behind him, his mother, Diane Whitlock, nodded once, sharp and approving. "You were too generous with her," she said, not even trying to lower her voice. "Too patient." This was overdue. Vanessa didn't speak. She didn't need to. The look on her face said everything. Calm. Certain. Like she had already stepped into a role that used to belong to someone else. Elise finally moved. She walked toward the suitcase slowly, ignoring the way it had fallen open. A sleeve of her coat was half out, brushing against the wet grass. She bent down, lifted it, folded it back inside with careful hands, and pressed the zipper closed as much as it would go. No rush, no panic. Aaron watched her, something flickering in his expression. Irritation, mostly. "That's it?" he said. "That's all you have to say?" She looked up at him. Her face was calm. Not empty. Not broken, just steady. "Okay, Aaron," she said quietly. 2 words, that was all. It should have felt like submission. That's what he wanted. That's what everyone watching expected. But it didn't land that way. There was something about the way she said it, something that didn't match the scene. It did not match the suitcase, or the wet grass, or the crowd, or the humiliation he had carefully built for her. It felt finished. Aaron scoffed, shaking his head. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "You really thought you belonged here." Elise didn't respond. Because that wasn't the part that mattered. What mattered was that 6 hours earlier, in a quiet office 20 miles away, she had sat at the head of a long glass table while a room full of people waited for her to speak. They hadn't raised their voices. They hadn't needed to. "Final approval is yours," one of them had said, sliding a set of documents toward her. "Once you sign, the acquisition goes into execution immediately." She had read every page. Not quickly, not carelessly, carefully, because that was how she had always done things. Quietly, thoroughly, without announcing what she was building. The name on the documents hadn't been hers, not the one Aaron knew. It never was. The company structure was layered, deliberate, designed that way from the beginning. For a reason, because she had wanted something simple, something real. A life where she wasn't measured first by what she owned. A life where someone chose her without knowing what came with her. So she had said yes when Aaron offered her that version of herself. The quiet one, the easy one, the one he could explain to his friends as someone he had helped, someone he had brought up. He liked that story. He liked being the one with power, and she had let him believe it. For a while, it had almost felt true. Until it didn't. Until the comments started. Small at first, then sharper, then public. Until dinners turned into performances where she was the punchline. Until Vanessa stopped pretending to be just an employee. until silence became easier than correcting people who had already decided who she was. Back on the lawn, Elise lifted the suitcase upright. The handle clicked into place. Aaron stepped forward, blocking her path for a moment. "Don't come back," he said. "You hear me? This is done." She met his eyes. "I hear you," she said, and she meant it, because there was nothing left here for her to hold on to. Not the house, not the name, not the version of herself that had waited for someone else to see her clearly. A phone buzzed in her bag. She didn't reach for it, not yet, but she knew who it was. The same number that had called earlier that morning. The same voice that had said, calm and precise, "Everything is ready. We just need your confirmation to proceed." She had given it. And somewhere in systems Aaron had never seen, processes had already begun to move. Slowly, quietly, irreversibly. Elise pulled Tokes past him and stepped onto the sidewalk. No one stopped her. No one spoke. They just watched. Because to them, this was simple. A man throwing out a woman who had nothing. A story they understood. What they didn't understand was why she wasn't fighting, why she wasn't crying, why she wasn't begging. As she reached the curb, her phone buzzed again. This time, she took it out. A single message lit up the screen. "The board is assembled, awaiting your presence." Elise looked at it for a second, then locked the screen and slipped the phone back into her bag. Behind her, Aaron turned away, already walking back toward the house, toward the life he thought he had secured. He didn't look back. He didn't see the moment Elise paused at the edge of the street, her hand tightening slightly on the suitcase handle. He didn't hear the quiet breath she let out. Not regret, not fear, something else. Because the question wasn't why she didn't fight. The real question was why she didn't need to. Aaron didn't go after her. He stood there for a moment, watching Elise walk away with that same quiet pace, like nothing about the last 10 minutes had touched her. Then he exhaled sharply and turned back toward the house. "Unbelievable," he muttered again, louder this time, for the benefit of the people still watching. 3 years, and that's all she has to say. Diane stepped aside to let him pass, her hand brushing his arm as he moved by. "You did the right thing," she said. "A woman like that would have dragged you down eventually." Vanessa followed them inside without a word, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded final. Outside, the neighbors lingered for a few seconds longer. Then, one by one, they drifted back to their own lives. The show was over. Aaron walked straight into the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and drank it in one long pull. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened window above the sink. Composed. In control, that was what this was about. Control. She didn't even argue, Vanessa said from the doorway, leaning against the frame now like she already belonged there. "That's strange, don't you think?" Aaron set the glass down harder than he meant to. "She never argues," he said. "That's the problem. She just stands there like she has nothing to lose." Diane let out a small, dismissive laugh. "Because she doesn't," she said. "Let's be honest, Aaron. What did she ever bring into this house? She had no career, no connections, no family worth mentioning. You gave her everything." Aaron nodded automatically, the words settling into something comfortable, familiar. That was the story he had told himself for years, that he had been generous, that he had lifted her up, that whatever she had become inside this house was because of him, and now he had corrected a mistake. Still, something about the way she had looked at him lingered, not fear, not anger, something else. He pushed it aside. "It's done," he said. "I've got more important things to focus on." Vanessa smiled at that, stepping further into the kitchen. "You mean the acquisition?" she asked lightly. Aaron's attention shifted immediately. "Yeah," he said. "That's what actually matters, because it did. For the past 6 months, everything had been hanging on that deal. His company had been bleeding quietly, numbers slipping in ways he had managed to keep contained. Investors were restless. Lenders were asking questions he didn't want to answer. Then the offer had come. A large acquiring group, quiet, aggressive, buying up distressed assets across multiple sectors. At first, he had thought it was just another opportunistic play. Then he saw the terms. They weren't just buying, they were restructuring, consolidating, absorbing debt in a way that made survival possible. For him, it was a lifeline. "You're sure they're moving forward?" Vanessa asked. Aaron gave a confident nod. My lawyer said we're in the final stage, he said. There's a signing meeting tomorrow. They want me there. Diane's expression brightened. So it's really happening, she said. The company gets stabilized, your name stays intact. And all of this, she gestured vaguely toward the front door, becomes irrelevant. Exactly, Aaron said. That was the future he was choosing. Not the quiet woman who folded clothes on the lawn, the one who knew how to stand beside him in a room full of power. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice softening. You deserve that, she said. You've been carrying too much for too long. Aaron let that sink in. It felt right, simple, clean. Unlike the complication he had just removed from his life. Across the city, Elise stepped into the back seat of a waiting car without looking behind her. The driver didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He simply pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic. She placed the suitcase beside her and leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment, not to escape, to think. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. Yes, she said. Everything is prepared. The voice on the other end replied, calm and precise. The board is assembled. We're aligned across legal and finance. We just need your presence for the final authorization tomorrow morning. Elise looked out the window as the city moved past in a blur of glass and steel. And the Whitlock position? She asked. A brief pause. Contained, the voice said. Their liabilities have been fully mapped. Once execution begins, their structure will be absorbed under the primary holding. There will be no independent control left. Elise nodded slightly, even though they couldn't see her. Good, she said. There was no satisfaction in her voice. Just clarity. We'll proceed as planned, she added. No changes. Understood. The call ended. She lowered the phone slowly, her reflection faint in the dark glass beside her. Same face. Same quiet expression. Nothing about her looked different. That had always been the point. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thin folder, running her fingers along the edge. Inside were copies. Not the originals. Those were already secured where they needed to be. She opened it briefly, just enough to confirm what she already knew. Signatures, structures, authority. Then she closed it again, because none of that needed to be proven tonight. What mattered was timing. Back at the house, Aaron's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced at the screen, expecting one of his lawyers. It wasn't. It was an email notification. From the acquiring group. Subject line. Final confirmation, executive presence required. He opened it immediately, scanning the contents. Time. Location. Formal request for attendance, and one line that made him pause. The principal owner will be present for direct authorization. Aaron frowned slightly, reading it again. That's new, he said under his breath. What is? Vanessa asked. He shook his head. Nothing, he said, just higher-level involvement than I expected. Diane smiled approvingly. That means it's serious, she said. It means they see value. Aaron nodded. Of course they did. They were investing in him. In his company. In everything he had built. He locked his phone and set it down on the counter, a small sense of anticipation settling in his chest. Tomorrow would fix everything. Tomorrow would prove he had made the right choices. Tomorrow would put him back where he belonged. He didn't know that across the city, the person holding that authority had just confirmed his future, and that she had already walked away from his past. Elise didn't go home. There wasn't a home to go back to, not in the way people meant it. The car slowed in front of a discreet building downtown. Nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. Just glass, steel, and a quiet entrance with no signage. The kind of place people passed without noticing. The driver stepped out, opened her door, and waited. Elise, he said softly, a tone that didn't match the one anyone had used with her that morning. Not dismissive, not casual. Careful. She stepped out without looking at him, pulling her suitcase behind her. The wheels rolled smoothly now, clean pavement replacing wet grass. Inside, the lobby was silent. No crowd, no noise. Just a receptionist who stood the moment Elise entered. Good evening, she said. They've been expecting you. Elise gave a small nod. Thank you. No explanation. None needed. The elevator opened before she reached it. As the doors closed behind her, she finally let out a breath. Not shaky. Not weak. Just measured. She didn't check her phone again. She already knew what was waiting. Upstairs, the doors opened into a private floor. A conference room stretched across the far side, lights still on, figures visible through the glass walls. They turned as she stepped inside. Not one of them stayed seated. "Miss Carter," a man near the head of the said Ed, stepping forward immediately. "We didn't expect you this early." "I didn't want delays tomorrow," Elise replied. Her voice was calm, controlled, the same tone she had used outside. But here it meant something different. No one questioned her. The man nodded quickly. "Of course. We've finalized the structure. Legal has confirmed compliance across all jurisdictions. Finance has run the projections twice. We're aligned." He gestured toward the table. "Everything is ready for your review." Elise placed her suitcase by the wall and stepped forward. Papers were already laid out, organized. She didn't sit. She flipped through the documents, scanning each section without rushing. Her eyes moved quickly, but nothing slipped past her. A second man, older, with the kind of presence that came from decades in high-level negotiations, spoke carefully. "We adjusted the Whitlock exposure as you requested," he said. "Their debt is now fully integrated into the acquisition structure. Once executed, their equity position dissolves under the parent entity." Elise paused on that page. "Any resistance expected?" she asked. "Minimal," he said. "They don't have the leverage to push back. Their board approved preliminary terms without realizing the full scope." "Of course they did." Elise closed the file gently. "And the timing?" she asked. "Tomorrow morning," the first man said. "We've scheduled the signing for 10. Media will be present, but only for the broader announcement. The Whitlock piece remains internal." Elise nodded once. That was exactly how she wanted it. Controlled, quiet, not a spectacle. Because this wasn't about humiliation. It was about consequence. Back at the house, Aaron sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone, reading the email again. The language was precise, formal. But something about it bothered him. "The principal owner will be present for direct authorization," he frowned. "That's unusual," he said out loud. Vanessa looked up from where she was sitting across from him. "What is?" "Usually deals like this are handled through layers," Aaron said. "You don't get direct access to the top. Not unless—" He stopped. "Unless what?" she pressed. He shook his head. "Nothing. It just means they're serious." Diane leaned back in her chair. "Or it means they want to see who they're investing in," she said. "Which is good for you." Aaron nodded slowly. That made sense. They wanted to look him in the eye, confirm he was the right person to carry things forward. That's what this was. Validation. His phone buzzed again. A message this time, from his lawyer. "We need to review final documents before tomorrow. There are a few structural notes you should understand." Aaron typed back quickly. "Send them over." Seconds later, a file came through. He opened it, scanning the first few pages. Legal language, dense, technical. He skimmed faster, then slowed. "What is it?" Vanessa asked, leaning closer. Aaron didn't answer right away. There was a section buried in the middle. Easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. Control provisions. Transfer of authority upon execution. His company name appeared again and again, but not in the way he expected. Not as a partner, as an asset. "That's," he muttered, scrolling back, "that's not right." Diane leaned forward now. "What are you talking about?" Aaron shook his head, irritation creeping in. "It's just legal phrasing," he said quickly. "They structure things aggressively. It's normal." But it didn't feel normal. He read the clause again. "Upon execution, all operational control transitions to the acquiring entity, with prior leadership subject to review." Subject to review. Vanessa repeated, reading over his shoulder. "What does that mean?" "It means," Aaron hesitated. "It means they evaluate leadership after the deal closes." "And?" she asked. "And nothing," he said, sharper this time. "It's standard." He closed the file. Too quickly. Because something about it didn't sit right. But he wasn't about to question it now. Not when everything depended on this going through. Not when this was his way back. Across the city, Elise signed one page. Then another. Not the final documents. Just internal approvals. Authorization layers that set everything into motion. Each signature was deliberate. Each one moved the structure closer to completion. A woman beside her, legal counsel, slid one more document forward. "This confirms your direct authority over the final execution," she said. "Once you sign tomorrow, there's no reversal." Elise looked at it. No reversal. She picked up the pen, paused for half a second. Not because she was unsure. because she understood exactly what it meant. Then she signed. The room went quiet, not tense, respectful. "It's done," the first man said softly. Elise set the pen down. "Tomorrow," she said. "We finish it." Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. A name she recognized, Aaron. She didn't open the message. Not yet. Because whatever he had to say now didn't change anything. She placed the phone face down on the table and looked back at the documents in front of her. Everything was aligned. Everything was ready. And tomorrow, he was going to walk into a room believing he was about to be saved, not realizing he had already signed away everything. Aaron didn't sleep well. He told himself it was the stress, the deal, the pressure of closing something this big. That was normal. Anyone in his position would feel it. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elise standing on the lawn, folding that coat like none of it mattered. It irritated him more than anything she could have said. By morning, he had pushed it down far enough to function. He stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his tie with careful precision. The suit was his best. Sharp, expensive. The kind of thing that reminded people he belonged in rooms where decisions were made. Vanessa watched him from the bed, her expression soft but focused. "You look like you already won," she said. Aaron allowed himself a small smile. "I did," he said. "This is just the paperwork." That's what he needed it to be. Simple. Controlled. Not complicated like the document he had read the night before. He hadn't opened it again. There was no point overthinking it. Legal language always looked worse than it was. His lawyers would walk him through it. They always did. Downstairs, Diane was already waiting, dressed more formally than usual. "We should leave soon," she said. "First impressions matter." Aaron nodded, grabbing his phone. "They're expecting me," he said. "I won't be late." Vanessa stood, smoothing her dress. "I'm coming," she said, as if it had already been decided. Aaron hesitated for half a second, then nodded again. Of course she was coming. This was the future. Across the city, Elise was already at the building. She had arrived before anyone else, not because she needed to, because she preferred it that way. The boardroom was empty when she stepped inside, the morning light cutting across the long table in clean lines. The city stretched beyond the glass walls, distant and quiet. She placed her bag on the table and took out the final set of documents. Not to read them, to confirm. Everything was exactly where it should be. Structure, authority, control, the kind of control that didn't need to be announced. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said. The same legal counsel from the night before stepped inside. "Good morning," she said. "Media is setting up on the lower level. Internal attendees are arriving within the hour." Elise nodded. "And Whitlock?" "Confirmed," she replied. "He's on schedule. His team believes this is a stabilization agreement." Of course they did. Elise closed the folder. "Keep it that way," she said. The lawyer hesitated, then added carefully, "There is one thing you should be aware of. His counsel flagged a clause late last night. Nothing formal yet, but they may ask questions during signing." Elise looked at her. "What kind of questions?" "Control provisions," she said. "They may push for clarification on post-execution authority." Elise considered that for a moment. "They can ask," she said. "We'll answer. Simple. Direct. No room for confusion." Back in the car, Aaron checked his phone again as they pulled up to the building. It wasn't flashy, as that surprised him. For something this large, he expected more presence, more visibility. Something that made it obvious he was stepping into a major deal. Instead, it looked like any other corporate tower. "Are you sure this is the place?" Vanessa asked. Aaron frowned slightly. "It matches the address," he said. Diane leaned forward from the back seat. "The real ones don't need to show off," she said. "Remember that." Aaron nodded, though something about it still felt off. He stepped out first, adjusting his jacket as he looked up at the building. This was it. The moment everything turned. Inside, the lobby staff greeted him immediately. "Mr. Whitlock," the receptionist said. "We've been expecting you. Please follow me." That part felt right. He walked with confidence, Vanessa and Diane just behind him. The elevator ride was quiet. Too quiet. No small talk, no introductions. Just a smooth ascent. When the doors opened, they stepped into a hallway that led directly to a set of double glass doors. Through them, Aaron could see the room. Long table. Executives. Lawyers. Everything exactly as it should be. He stepped forward. The room shifted slightly as he entered. Not dramatically. Just enough for him to notice. People looked up, measured, observing, not welcoming. Aaron forced a smile and extended his hand to the nearest executive. "Aaron Whitlock," he said. The man shook it briefly. "We know," he replied. No introduction in return. Aaron pulled his hand back slowly. Vanessa's fingers tightened slightly on his arm. "This way," someone said, gesturing toward the seats near the middle of the table. Not the head. Aaron noticed that. But he didn't react. Not yet. He sat down, placing his folder in front of him. His eyes moved across the room, taking in faces, trying to read the dynamics. Something felt off, not wrong. Just not aligned with what he expected. His lawyer leaned in from the side. "We'll go through this carefully," he whispered. "Let them present first." Aaron nodded, though irritation flickered under the surface. This wasn't supposed to feel like this. This was supposed to feel like control. Across the room, a seat at the head of the table remained empty. Aaron glanced at it. "That the principal?" he asked quietly. His lawyer followed his gaze. "Yes," he said, "that's the final authority." Aaron leaned back slightly. Good, that's who he needed to convince. That's who this was really about. The doors behind him opened, soft, controlled. Aaron didn't turn immediately. He assumed it was another executive. Another layer of formality. But the room changed. Not loud, not obvious. Just enough. Conversation stopped. Chairs shifted. Aaron felt it before he saw it. That subtle shift in attention. The kind that didn't happen for just anyone. He turned. And for a split second, his mind didn't catch up with what his eyes were seeing, because the person walking into the room was Elise. For a second, Aaron thought it was a mistake, not a misunderstanding, not confusion. A mistake. Like his brain had pulled the wrong image into place. 'Cause Elise didn't belong in that room. Not like this. Not walking in like she had a reason to be there. Not with two senior executives shifting slightly behind her. As if they were following her lead. He blinked once, then again, waiting for the moment to correct itself. It didn't. Elise stepped fully into the room, the doors closing quietly behind her. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just that same calm expression she had on the lawn. The same one that had irritated him more than anything else. Except here it landed differently. People were still standing. For her, Aaron's chest tightened slightly. "This is not funny," he said, his voice lower now, controlled, but edged. "Elise, what are you doing here?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she walked past him, not around him, past him, as if he were just another person in the room. That hit harder than anything he had said to her earlier. Vanessa shifted beside him, her fingers tightening again. "Aaron," she whispered, uncertain now. Elise reached the head of the table. The empty seat, the one his lawyer had pointed out. She stopped there for a moment, placing her hand lightly against the back of the chair. Then she looked up, not at Aaron, at the room. "Good morning," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It carried anyway. The same man who had greeted Aaron earlier stepped forward immediately. "Good morning, Miss Carter," he said. "We're ready to proceed when you are, Miss Carter." Aaron felt the word hit him, but it didn't settle yet. It just hovered there, unresolved. "That's—" He started, then stopped. His lawyer leaned closer, his voice suddenly tight. "Do you know her?" he asked. Aaron didn't answer. Because he did. And he didn't. Elise pulled out the chair and sat down, at the head of the table. No one questioned it. No one corrected it. No one even looked surprised, because to them this was normal. The man at the front end of the room cleared his throat. "For the record," he said, "we are here to finalize the acquisition agreement under the authority of the principal owner." He turned slightly, gestured toward Elise. "Miss Carter." The room stayed quiet. Aaron felt something shift inside him. Not understanding, not yet. But something close to it. "No," he said, shaking his head once. "No, that's not." His voice didn't carry the way it had on the lawn. It sounded smaller, contained, because no one was looking at him now. Not really, they were waiting for her. Elise opened the folder in front of her. Not rushed, not dramatic, just precise. She turned one page, then another, her fingers steady. Then she looked up, and this time she looked directly at Aaron. Not angry, not cold, just clear. "You're here," she said. 2 words. Simple, but they landed differently now. Aaron stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't get to do this, he said. You don't get to just walk in here and what? Elise asked. She didn't raise her voice, didn't interrupt him, just let the question sit there. Aaron opened his mouth, then closed it, because he didn't know what the rest of that sentence was. Vanessa stepped forward slightly. There's obviously been some kind of misunderstanding, she said quickly, her tone shifting to something more careful. We were invited here by the acquiring group. Aaron is, I'm aware, Elise said, still calm, still even. She turned a page in the folder. Your invitation stands, she added. You're exactly where you need to be. That didn't make sense. It should have reassured him. Instead, it made something colder settle in his chest. Aaron's lawyer stepped in, voice measured but firm. Miss Carter, he said, we'd appreciate clarification on your role in this process. Finally, a normal question, something grounded, something that could bring this back into order. Elise looked at him, held his gaze. Then she slid a document across the table. Not to Aaron, to the lawyer. He picked it up, scanning the first page, then the second. His expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. Aaron saw it. What is it? He demanded. The lawyer didn't answer right away. He read one more line, then slowly looked up at Elise. Is this accurate? He asked. It is, no explanation, just explanation. Aaron's patience snapped. Will someone tell me what's going on, he said. Louder now, the room didn't react. Not the way it had on the lawn. No one flinched, no one shifted, because he wasn't the center here. The lawyer exhaled slowly, then turned to him. Aaron, he said carefully. This document identifies the controlling entity behind the acquisition. Aaron frowned. Yeah, he said. That's the group. It identifies the controlling owner, the lawyer corrected. He placed the paper down in front of Aaron, turned it so he could read it. Aaron looked down. His name wasn't there. He didn't expect it to be. But something else was. A name. A structure, a signature line. He recognized the company name. Of course he did. It was the one buying him out, the one saving his company. But below that, the ownership line. His eyes moved over it once, then again, slower. Because something about it didn't line up. Not with what he believed. Not with what he had been told. He looked up. At Elise, at the head of the table, still calm, still steady, and for the first time, not small. Explain it, he said, his voice quieter, now but tighter. Elise held his gaze. Then she reached forward and turned the page, revealing the final section. The part that hadn't been discussed, the part that hadn't been questioned, the part that made everything else make sense. Aaron didn't know it yet, but he was about to understand why she hadn't needed to fight back. Aaron stared at the page, but the words didn't settle. Not immediately. They blurred together at first. Legal language, structure, ownership. The same dense phrasing he had skimmed the night before. But now, it wasn't something he could skim past. Now it was in front of him, waiting. Read it, his lawyer said quietly. Aaron's fingers tightened slightly on the paper as he forced himself to focus. Controlling interest 87%. Primary authority. Executive discretion retained by founder. Founder, his eyes moved down, slower, and then they stopped. Elise Carter, it was written clearly. No room for interpretation, no ambiguity buried in clauses or subtext, just a name. Her name. Aaron let out a short breath that didn't quite sound like anything. Not disbelief. Not anger. Something in between. That's not possible, he said. No one answered. Because no one in that room needed to argue with him. The document already had. Vanessa leaned closer, her voice low, strained. Aaron, what does that mean? He didn't look at her, didn't look at anyone. Just kept staring at the line like it might change if he waited long enough. It means, his lawyer said carefully, that the acquiring group is controlled by her. The word her landed harder than the rest. Aaron finally looked up, at Elise. Still sitting at the head of the table, still calm, still watching him, not with satisfaction, not with anger, but with clarity. No, Aaron said again, louder, this time. No, this is some kind of setup. You don't just, he gestured vaguely at the room. The document's her. You don't just walk into something like this. I didn't, and Elise said. Her voice cut through the noise without rising. I built it. Silence followed, not dramatic, just complete. Aaron's jaw tightened. You expect me to believe that, he said. That you, secretly built a company big enough to absorb mine without anyone noticing? Elise didn't react to the tone. She had heard worse. You didn't notice, she said. That was all. Simple, but it hit. Because it wasn't an argument. It was a fact. Vanessa stepped back slightly, her hand slipping off Aaron's arm. For the first time since they walked into the building, she didn't look confident. She looked uncertain. Diane, on the other hand, leaned forward, her voice sharp. "This is ridiculous," she said. "There has to be some kind of mistake. That girl, she caught herself, but not fast enough. She had nothing when she came into this family." Elise turned her head slightly toward her. Not fully. Just enough. "I didn't come into your family for what you think," she said. Diane scoffed. "Oh, please, don't pretend I'm not pretending," Elise said, again calm, again controlled, and that made it worse, because there was no emotion to push against, no weakness to exploit, just truth laid out without effort. Aaron pushed back from the table, standing now. "Then explain it," he demanded. "Explain how this makes any sense." Elise studied him for a moment, not like a wife looking at her husband, like someone evaluating a decision that had already been made. "I didn't hide it," she said. "I just didn't announce it." Aaron laughed once. "Sharp, that's the same thing." "No," she said. "It's not." She gestured lightly toward the documents you never asked. The room stayed quiet, because that wasn't just directed at him. It was something everyone in that room understood. Aaron's expression hardened. "Don't twist this," he said. "You let me believe. I let you believe what you needed to," Elise replied, still even, still steady. "You wanted to be the one in control," she added. "You wanted to be the one who built something. I didn't take that from you." Aaron stepped closer to the table. "You let me think you were dependent on me." Elise didn't deny it. "I wanted to know," she said, "if that mattered to you." That stopped him. Not completely, but enough. "And?" he asked. Her answer came without hesitation. It did. The word settled into the room like weight. Vanessa looked away first. Diane didn't speak again. Aaron exhaled slowly, his anger shifting now. Not gone, just changing shape. "You should have told me," he said. It sounded weaker than he intended. Elise tilted her head slightly. "When?" she asked. Not sarcastic, not cruel, just precise. "When you told your friends I wouldn't understand a deal," she continued. "When your mother called me a burden in my own home. Or this morning, when you told me I came with nothing." Each example landed exactly where it needed to. No exaggeration, no added weight, just facts. Aaron didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because every moment she named had happened exactly the way she said it had, and he had never questioned it. Elise reached for another document and slid it across the table. "This is the finalized structure," she said. "Once signed, Whitlock Industries becomes a subsidiary under the parent entity." Aaron didn't touch it. "What happens to me?" he asked. The question came out before he could stop it, and he hated that, because it sounded like uncertainty, like dependence. "You stay," she said. "For now." That should have been a relief. It wasn't. "Subject to review," she added, the same words from the clause, now spoken out loud, clear, unavoidable. Aaron swallowed. "And if I don't sign?" he asked. The room shifted slightly. Not tense, just attentive. Because now the question mattered. Elise met his eyes. "Then the terms change," she said. "Not in your favor. No threat in her voice, no emotions. Just consequence." Aaron's lawyer leaned in quickly. "We need to think this through," he whispered. "This isn't what we expected, but it's still salvageable." Aaron didn't move, didn't respond. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure what salvageable meant anymore. Across the table, Elise picked up the pen. Not to sign yet, just to hold it. A quiet reminder of where the final decision actually sat. "Take a moment," she said. Not generous, not cruel, just fair, and that was what made it unbearable. Because she wasn't fighting him, she wasn't trying to win. She had already won. Aaron looked down at the document again, at her name, at the structure, at the reality he had missed for years. And then, slowly, he realized something worse than losing control. He had never had it. He looked up again, meeting her eyes, and for the first time since this started, he understood exactly who he had thrown out of his house. Aaron didn't sit back down. He couldn't. The chair behind him felt like something from a different life, meant for a version of himself that still understood what was happening. Now nothing lined up. "You knew," he said, his voice quieter but sharper. "This whole time, you knew." Elise didn't rush to answer. She closed the folder in front of her, aligning it neatly with the edge of the table before looking back at him. "Yes," she said. No apology, no hesitation, just the truth. Aaron let out a slow breath, shaking his head. "And you just watched?" he asked. "You let everything happen like that? You let my company get to this point?" "My company didn't get to that point," Elise said. The correction landed clean. Not aggressive, just accurate. Aaron flinched at it, even if he didn't show it fully. "You could have stopped it." He pushed. "You could have said something. You could have—" "Would you have listened?" Elise asked. Again, not emotional, just direct. Aaron opened his mouth, closed it. Because he already knew the answer, Vanessa stepped in again, her voice softer now, careful. "This doesn't have to be adversarial," she said. "We can still find a way to work together. Aaron has built something valuable." Elise looked at her for the first time. Fully. Not dismissing her, not overlooking her. Seeing her. Vanessa stopped speaking mid-sentence. There was something in that look that made continuing feel like a mistake. "I'm aware of what he built," Elise said. Her tone didn't change, but there was a subtle shift underneath it. Not anger. Recognition. Measured. "And I'm also aware of what he didn't," she added. Silence followed again. Heavier this time. Because that sentence didn't just land on Aaron. It landed on everyone who had supported his version of the story. Diane stiffened in her chair. "You're trying to erase him," she said, her voice tight. "You think because you have money, you can just rewrite everything?" Elise turned her gaze toward her. "I'm not rewriting anything," she said. "I'm formalizing what already exists." The difference mattered, and Diane felt it. Aaron dragged a hand down his face, frustration building again. But now it didn't feel as solid. "This is still my company," he said. "My name is on it." Elise nodded slightly. "It was," she said. The past tense hit harder than anything else. Aaron's lawyer stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Let's focus on what matters right now," he said. "We have terms in front of us. We can negotiate structure, leadership roles, transition timelines. Those have already been defined," Elise said. Not cutting him off, just stating reality. He hesitated. "Defined doesn't mean final," he said. "Not until signatures in place." Elise reached for the pen again, turned it once between her fingers, then set it back down. "You're right," she said. It gave him a moment of relief, small, brief. "And that's why you're here," she continued. The relief disappeared. Aaron looked at the documents again, slower this time. "You're not just buying the company," he said. "You're dismantling it." "No," Elise said. "I'm restructuring it." "That's not the same thing," he snapped. "It is," she replied, "if you're standing on the wrong side of it." That landed. Because it wasn't said with force. It was said like a fact he should already understand. Vanessa took a step back, her eyes flicking between them. She wasn't smiling anymore. The confidence she had walked in with was gone, replaced by something more calculating, re-evaluating. Aaron's noticed. Of course he did, and something inside him tightened further. Elise didn't miss it either, but she didn't comment. She didn't need to. Instead, she slid another page forward. "This outlines your position post-acquisition," she said. Aaron didn't touch it immediately. "What kind of position?" he asked. "Transitional," she said. "Subject to performance review and board approval. The same structure, the same control, just spelled out more clearly." "And if I refuse?" he asked again. Elise met his eyes this time. There was a pause. "Not uncertainty. Consideration, then you walk away," she said. "Simple, clean, no threat, no negotiation." Aaron's jaw tightened. "With nothing," he said. He didn't mean to echo his own words. Elise held his gaze. "You said that to me yesterday," she replied. No anger, no edge, just a mirror. The room stayed still because everyone there remembered. Even if they hadn't been on that lawn, they understood the weight of it. Aaron looked down at the document, then back at her. "You're really going to do this," he said. Elise didn't answer right away. She looked at the table, at the contracts, at the structure she had built piece by piece long before he ever realized he was standing inside it. Then she looked back at him. "I already did," she said. "That was the difference. This wasn't a decision being made. It was a decision being executed." Aaron exhaled slowly, something shifting in his expression again. Not anger this time. Something closer to realization. "You set this up before any of this," he said. "Before this morning. Before Vanessa's. Before, yes, Elise stayed." He swallowed. It wasn't a question. Elise didn't correct him. For a moment, the room faded around them, just slightly. enough for something more personal to slip through. "I wanted to know who I was married to," she said. That was it. No speech, no explanation. Just that. Aaron looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Not the woman on the lawn, not the version he had created. The one who had been sitting across from him all along, and he had never looked close enough to notice. His lawyer cleared his throat quietly. "We should proceed," he said. "Time is limited." Reality pushed back in. Elise nodded once. She picked up the pen again. This time, she didn't set it down. Aaron's hand hovered over the document in front of him. He hesitated. Because this was the moment, not the deal. Not the acquisition, the choice, sign, and step into something he didn't control. Or refuse, and walk away from everything he thought he owned. Across the table, Elise waited. Not pressuring, not rushing, just waiting. Because she knew something he didn't. And as Aaron looked down at the signature line again, something cold settled in his chest. A realization that came too late. No matter what he chose, he had already lost. Aaron picked up the pen. For a moment it hovered above the page, not touching, not moving. Everyone in the room was watching, not openly, but enough. Because this was the part that mattered. Not the reveal. Not the shock. The decision. His lawyer leaned closer again. "We can negotiate terms after signing," he whispered, "but if you walk away now, you lose leverage completely." Leverage. The word felt thin, like something from a conversation that no longer applied. Aaron's eyes moved once more over the document. The structure, the clauses, the way everything had already been arranged. Carefully, quietly, without him noticing. Across the table, Elise didn't move. She didn't rush him, didn't push. She simply waited, because she knew something he was just beginning to understand. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an outcome. Aaron exhaled slowly. Then he signed. The sound of the pen against paper was small, but in that room it landed heavy, final. His lawyer closed his eyes briefly, then straightened. "We'll review transition details," he said, already shifting into damage control, but the moment had passed, because Elise picked up her own pen, and without hesitation she signed her name beneath his. Clean, steady, unshaken. The deal was done. A quiet ripple moved through the room. Papers were gathered. Assistants stepped forward. Legal teams exchanged brief nods, not celebration completion. Aaron sat back slowly. Something inside him felt hollow. Not like defeat, more like removal. Like something that had always been his had just been taken out and placed somewhere else. Across the table, Elise closed the folder. Effective immediately. One of the executives said, voice formal, "Whitlock Industries is now operating under the parent group. Transitional leadership remains in place pending review." Aaron heard the words, but they didn't fully register. Not until the next line. Debt obligations will be consolidated and restructured under the acquiring entity. Existing personal guarantees will be released upon compliance with transition terms. Released. That should have been good. It was. But it came with something else. His company wasn't his anymore. Vanessa shifted beside him again, but this time she didn't touch him. She looked at Elise, then back at Aaron, then at the table, calculating. Aaron noticed. Of course he did. And for the first time something cold settled in his chest. Not anger, understanding. He turned slightly. "You knew about this?" he asked her. Vanessa blinked. "No," she said quickly. "Aaron, you thought what?" He pressed. "That this was your deal," she said. Her voice was softer now. Careful, different. Aaron held her gaze for a second longer, then looked away because the answer didn't matter. Not anymore. At the head of the table, Elise stood. The room followed, not because of habit, because of hierarchy. "Transition meetings will be scheduled," she said, addressing the group. "I expect full reports within 48 hours. Heads nodded. Notes were taken. No one questioned her, because this was her structure, her system, her authority. Aaron watched it happen, watched the way the room moved around her. The way decisions flowed from her without resistance, and for the first time he saw it clearly. This wasn't sudden. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a trick. It was something she had built long before he ever thought to look. Vanessa stepped back another half step. Subtle, but visible distance. Diane noticed it too. Her expression tightened. "Elise," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the room, not respectful, not measured, still holding on to something that no longer existed. You think this changes anything? She continued. Money doesn't make you better than us. The room went still again. Not because of the words, because of how out of place they sounded. Elise turned toward her slowly, not offended, not defensive, just aware. This doesn't make me better, she said. A small pause. But it does make me responsible for what happens next. That was the difference, and everyone in the room felt it. Diane opened her mouth again, closed it, because there was nothing left to argue with. Not here, not like this. Aaron stood up. The movement felt heavier than it should have, like standing in a place where gravity had changed. What happens now? He asked. The question was simple, but it carried everything underneath it. Control, identity, future. Elise looked at him. For a moment the room faded again. Not completely, just enough. You do your job, she said. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't generous. It was direct. And if I don't? He asked. Elise didn't hesitate. Then someone else will. The truth of it landed clean. No threat, no emotion, just reality. Aaron nodded once, slow, because there was nothing else to do. Across the room, Vanessa picked up her bag, quietly. She didn't announce it. Didn't say anything. But the intention was clear. Aaron saw it. Of course he did. You're leaving? He asked. She hesitated for half a second, then nodded. I have another meeting, she said. The excuse was thin. They both knew it. Aaron let out a short breath. Not surprised. Just confirmed. Of course you do, he said. She didn't respond. Just turned and walked toward the door. Didn't look back, and that was it. The shift completed, the same way she had walked in. Clean. Uncomplicated. Gone. Aaron stood there for a second longer, then looked back at Elise. She was already speaking with her legal team, already moving forward. Already past this moment, he realized something then. Something quiet. Something final. She hadn't taken anything from him. She had simply stopped holding him up, and without that, everything else had collapsed. He took a step back, then another, not leaving yet, just repositioning, because staying meant something different now. Not power, not control, responsibility. Across the table, Elise finished her conversation and turned slightly. Their eyes met one last time in that room. No anger, no victory, just clarity. Aaron opened his mouth. He didn't even know what he was going to say. But before the words came out, Hal's phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced down automatically. A notification from his bank. He frowned, opened it, and the color drained from his face. Because the message was short, direct, and it changed everything he thought was still his. His personal accounts had just been frozen pending review under the new financial structure. Aaron's hand tightened around his phone. For a moment, he thought it was a glitch, a delay, something temporary. He opened the message again, reading it slower this time. Account activity restricted pending internal review. Access limited. Contact your financial institution. His chest went tight. That's not right, he said under his breath. No one responded. Because no one knew what he was looking at. Not yet. He stepped back from the table, eyes still locked on the screen, his thumb tapping quickly as he tried to access his banking app. The login loaded, then stalled, then redirected. Restricted access. A second message came through. Compliance notice. Linked financial entities under audit review following structural transition. Linked. Aaron's stomach dropped. He looked up slowly at Elise. She wasn't watching him anymore. She was already speaking with her legal team again, giving instructions, moving forward, like what just happened to him was all our account for. You knew, he said. This time his voice carried, not loud, but sharp enough to cut through the room. Elise paused, turned slightly. Not fully. Just enough. Knew what? She asked. Aaron stepped forward, holding up his phone. This, he said. My accounts. They're frozen. There it was. Months. Out in the open. A ripple moved through the room. Subtle, but real. Because this was no longer just corporate. It was personal. Elise looked at the screen briefly, then back at him. They're not frozen, she said. Aaron let out a short, humorless laugh. Really? Because I can't access a single. They're restricted, she corrected. The distinction mattered to her. Of course it did. To prevent asset misalignment during transition, she added. Like she was explaining something procedural. Routine. Aaron stared at her. That's my money. Elise didn't react. Some of it is, she said. The words landed like impact. What does that mean? He demanded. This time, she stepped closer. Not aggressively, not confrontationally, just enough to close the distance between them. It means, she said, that when your company was leveraged to maintain its position, personal guarantees and accounts were tied into that structure. Aaron shook his head immediately. That's standard. That doesn't give you the right to, it gives the structure the right, she said. Again, calm. Again, precise. Not me personally. That didn't help. It made it worse, because it meant this wasn't emotional. It wasn't revenge. It was built in. Aaron's lawyer stepped in quickly. We need to review this immediately, he said. There should be protections. There are, Elise said. He stopped, looked at her then. Why is this happening? He asked. Elise met his gaze. Because those protections depend on compliance, she said. Aaron felt something shift again, colder this time. Compliance with what? He asked. Elise didn't hesitate. Transition terms, she said. The same words, and now they carried more weight. Aaron laughed once, sharper now. So this is leverage, he said. You're squeezing me. No, Elise said. The answer came immediately. Firm, clear. I'm stabilizing a structure that was already unstable. That was the difference, at least, to her. Aaron looked around the room, at the lawyers, at the executives, at the people who had stood when she walked in. No one was stepping in. No one was correcting her, because to them, this was normal. Diane stood up suddenly. This is absurd, she said. You can't just walk in and take everything. That's not how this works. Elise turned toward her. It is how this works, she said. No raised voice, no emphasis, just Diane faltered. Because for the first time, she didn't have a response ready. Aaron exhaled slowly, forcing himself to think, to find something solid. There's a prenup, he said. The word landed like a lifeline. He turned to his lawyer. We have a prenup. This doesn't affect personal assets like that. The lawyer hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. Aaron saw it. What? He said. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, choosing his words carefully. The prenup protects premarital assets, he said. But if financial instruments were interwoven with business liabilities, they weren't. Aaron cut in. They might have been, the lawyer replied quietly. Aaron went still. Because suddenly he wasn't sure. He thought about the loans, the restructuring, the quiet pressure over the past year, the decisions he had made to keep everything afloat, decisions he hadn't fully explained to anyone, not even himself. You knew, he said again. This time, it wasn't accusation, it was realization. Elise didn't deny it. I understood the structure, she said. That was all. Aaron let out a breath that felt heavier than it should have. You could have warned me, he said. Elise held his gaze. I did. That stopped him. When? He asked. When I asked questions you dismissed, she replied. When I pointed out risks you ignored. When I stayed while things got worse. Each sentence landed without force, but they stacked. Because he remembered. He just hadn't listened. Across the room, Vanessa had stopped moving entirely. She wasn't leaving anymore. She was watching, not him. Elise, recalculating again. Aaron saw that too. Of course he did. And something inside him finally settled. Not in a good way, in a final way. He looked back at Elise, at the control. At the position she had always held without showing it. What happens if I don't comply? He asked. The question came out steady this time. No anger. No denial. Just clarity. Elise didn't hesitate. Then restrictions expand, she said. Simple. Direct until the structure is secure. Aaron nodded slowly. Because now he understood. This wasn't about taking anything from him. It was about protecting something from him that was worse. He looked down at his phone again, at the locked accounts, at the messages. At the reality he hadn't seen coming. Then he looked back up, at Elise, and for the first time he didn't see his wife. He saw the person who had always been in control. He just hadn't known it. Across the table, Elise turned back to her team. Schedule the first transition review, she said. End of week. Someone nodded, already making notes. Aaron stood there for a second longer. Then, slowly, he reached for the document again. Not to sign, not to argue, to read, properly, because for the first time he understood he had never actually known what he was part of. The house was gone. Not physically. It still stood behind its gates, manicured and untouched, just as it always had. But it no longer meant anything to Elise. She hadn't driven past it in weeks. There was nothing there she needed. Her new place was smaller, quiet. Set above a stretch of coastline where the mornings came in slow and steady. No staff waiting. No polished floors echoing footsteps. Just space. And silence that didn't feel heavy. For the first time in years, her life wasn't built around holding something together. It was her own. The transition had finalized 2 weeks earlier. Aaron's company no longer existed in the way he had once described it. It had been absorbed, restructured, its liability settled under the same system Elise had quietly built long before he ever noticed cracks forming. He still had a role, a smaller one, advisory, conditional. He had signed it himself. There had been no dramatic collapse, no public scandal. Just a quiet correction that left him standing in a world he no longer controlled. Vanessa had left before the final signatures were even complete. Elise hadn't followed what happened after. She didn't need to. Some things ended without requiring an audience. The divorce had been just as measured. Lawyers, filings, timelines. The prenup held where it applied. The rest had been sorted through negotiation, not emotion. Aaron had tried once, not to argue, not to fight, just to understand. He had met her in a conference room that no longer belonged to him. No raised voices, no accusations. Just one question he had asked again, quieter this time. Was any of it real? Elise had looked at him for a long moment, she said, and she had meant it. That was the part that made it complicated. She hadn't stayed because she needed anything from him. She had stayed because she had believed something could exist without power defining it. She had been wrong about that. But not about everything. Aaron had nodded slowly, like he understood too late. He hadn't asked for another chance. Not really, because even he could see that whatever they had once been wasn't something that could survive what had been revealed. Now, weeks later, Elise sat by the window of her new place, a mug cooling in her hands. Her phone buzzed once on the table beside her. An update, a board approval, another acquisition, another set of numbers that would have once meant everything. She glanced at it, then turned the screen face down. It could wait. That was new. Before, everything had been urgent. Everything had needed to be managed, contained, hidden. Now, nothing required her to prove she belonged in the room. She already knew she did, and that changed everything. She stood, stepping out onto the balcony. The ocean stretched out in front of her, steady and indifferent. For a long time, she had measured her value by what she could hold together. A marriage, a company she didn't claim, a life that looked smaller than it was. Now, she didn't need any of that to exist. She wasn't hiding anymore, but she also wasn't announcing anything. People who needed to know, knew. People who didn't, never really had. And that was fine. A message came through from her legal team. Final confirmation on the last structural adjustments. Clean, complete, closed. Elise read it once, then typed a single reply, approved. She set the phone down again. There was no rush of victory, no sense of triumph. Just something quieter, lighter, like setting down something she had carried for too long. Behind her, the room was simple, uncluttered. Nothing in it was there to impress anyone. It was enough. She thought about the lawn, the suitcase, the way Aaron had said, "You came with nothing." At the time, she hadn't corrected him. Not because she couldn't, but because she had realized something in that moment. If someone needed you to be nothing in order to feel like something, no explanation would ever be enough. So she hadn't given one. She had simply left, and in doing that, she had taken everything that actually mattered with her. Her name, her choices, her control, her self-worth. The wind shifted slightly, carrying the sound of waves higher against the rocks below. Elise closed her eyes for a moment, not to escape anything, just to feel where she was now. No performance, no expectations, no one waiting for her to fail so they could explain her. Just her. When she opened her eyes again, she felt something settle fully for the first time. Not power, not success, peace, and it didn't need to be witnessed to be real. She turned back inside, picking up her phone as she walked. There were still decisions to make, still work to do. But it no longer defined her, it supported her. That was the difference. At the door, she paused for just a second, not looking back, just breathing. Then she stepped forward into a life she had chosen, and this time no one else would decide what she was worth. If you've ever seen someone underestimated simply because they stayed quiet, you probably understand this story more than most. So tell me, how many quiet people do you think are being underestimated right now?